I was just a girl, a daughter, a sister, a student. And like every girl, I had dreams. I used to dream about flying. Not just metaphorically, really flying. Becoming a flight attendant. Wearing that uniform, walking through airports, seeing cities I'd only heard of. I wanted freedom. I wanted to live my own life. I thought that if I worked hard enough, maybe, just maybe, I could make it happen. But dreams are expensive. University costs money. So I started modeling. Nothing extreme, just basic work to pay my bills and keep going. It was work, it was honest, but in the eyes of some people, that made me a target. There was one man in particular. He told me he loved me. I never said yes, I never led him on, but he kept following me, calling me, threatening me. He thought I belonged to him. I told him no, again and again, but some men don't like rejection. To him, my no was an invitation to destroy me. I went to the police. I told people what he was doing. I showed the messages, the threats, the photos. I cried in front of adults who had power. And they told me, just block him. Don't give him attention. Are you sure you didn't encourage him? They made me feel like I was the problem. So I stopped asking for help. But the fear didn't stop. He kept showing up, waiting outside, watching me. I would look over my shoulder every time I left my house. Every step felt unsafe. So I made a decision. I left. I moved from Mansoura to Cairo. I went to live with my sister. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I could walk to the store without feeling like I was being hunted. I started smiling again. I began to feel human again. But then came the exam. One last university exam back in Mansoura. I didn't want to go. I begged myself not to. But I had no choice. I told myself, just go, take the test, come back. It's just one day. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I had a strange feeling in my chest, like something was waiting. But I told myself not to be paranoid, that I had already survived worse. I got dressed early that morning, put on my clothes, brushed my hair, tried to smile in the mirror. I told myself, be strong, you're almost done. I walked to the university. It all happened so fast. He was there. He waited for me. In broad daylight, in front of dozens of people, he pulled out a knife. He didn't say a word. He didn't hesitate. He went straight for me. I felt the first stab in my neck, then another, and another. I tried to scream. I tried to run, but my legs gave out. People were there. People saw. Some gasped, some pulled out their phones, but no one stopped him. He kept stabbing. I felt the warmth of my blood on the ground. I remember the smell of iron, the sound of panic around me, but no hands reached for me. No one tried to cover my wounds. No one fought him off. I died right there, right in front of the place I went to learn. On the ground, in the open, surrounded by silence. I thought the pain would end with death, but it didn't. Even after I was gone, some people blamed me. They said it was because I didn't wear the hijab, because I wore makeup, because I worked in modeling, because I smiled, because I was free. They said I deserved it. They said I brought shame, that I invited this, that if I had just stayed quiet, this wouldn't have happened. But none of that is true. I was just trying to live, to breathe, to study, to build something for myself. I wanted to travel the world, not die at the gates of my university. No one deserves what happened to me, and yet it happened, right there, in front of everyone. and no one helped. My name was Naira Ashraf, and I was from Egypt. When I was 12, I went to a sleepover that I'll never forget. Not because it was fun, not because it was special, but because it changed the way I see the world. There were around 20 girls invited. The host lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and we were all crammed in there like sardines. Some took the couch, some found corners on the floor. I ended up with a thin blanket on the cold tile in the kitchen. It was late. The lights were out, except for the soft blue flicker from the living room TV. I fell asleep to the hum of the refrigerator and the low murmur of distant whispers. At some point during the night, I woke up. No loud noise, no touch, just this sudden, sharp awareness that something wasn't right. My eyes opened slowly, and that's when I saw it. Perched on the counter across from me was something. Tall, dark, too tall to be human. Its limbs were too long, bent in impossible angles. It crouched like a gargoyle, one arm stretched above to the cabinet for balance, its head slightly tilted as if it was curious. At first, I couldn't move. Not because something was holding me down, but because I was frozen with fear. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A shadow? A trick of the light? But no, it had depth, presence, weight. I squeezed my eyes shut, hard, told myself I was dreaming, that when I opened them, it would be gone. But when I did, it was closer, no longer on the counter. It was standing, at my feet, looking down at me. I don't remember its face, but I remember its skin. Pale. Unnaturally pale, like wax under moonlight. I shut my eyes again and didn't open them until I felt the sun on my face. The next morning, I felt sick, like something inside me had been shaken loose. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. I just texted my mom and left before anyone else even woke up. That should have been the end of it. But 10 years later, the girl who hosted that sleepover died suddenly. At her memorial, a group of us started sharing old stories. I decided to tell mine, maybe to get it off my chest, maybe to see if anyone else remembered something weird from that night. One of her old friends went pale. She looked at me and said something I'll never forget. She always said something dark followed her dad around. It hit me like ice water down my spine. I hadn't thought about him in years. The father. I barely remember him that night. I just remembered he was quiet, absent almost. Later, I found out he had been to jail. He assaulted one of his daughter's friends. He was a predator. I don't know what I saw that night, but I know what I felt. That thing, it wasn't just standing over me, it was studying me, like it was waiting for something, or someone. I've never seen it again, and I've never experienced anything like that since. But I still wonder, what was it? And why did it choose me that night? Sometimes I think it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a demon. It was something worse. Something tied to people like her father. Something that doesn't just haunt houses, but people. And maybe it didn't come from me at all. Maybe I just got in its way. They call me a monster now, a killer, a name people whisper in fear. But no one ever asks what it felt like to live as prey before I ever struck like a predator. I was born into chaos. My father was a convicted child molester who hanged himself in prison. My mother abandoned me when I was just a baby. I grew up being passed around, used, and thrown away like I meant nothing. By the time I was a teenager, I was living in the woods behind someone's backyard, trading what I had to survive. My body, my soul. Florida's highways became my home. Lonely, hot, and unforgiving stretches of asphalt where no one ever asked where you came from, just where you were going. I'd stand near the exits, thumb out, makeup on, pretending I had a destination. But the truth was, I had nowhere left to go. Most of the time, the men were polite. They'd pick me up, we'd talk a little, do what they wanted, and I'd be gone before they even zipped up. But sometimes, I could see it in their eyes the moment I got in. That look, the one that told me they weren't planning on letting me leave. And that's when something inside me would snap. The first time was in 1989. A man named Richard. He offered me money and a warm meal. He took me deep into the woods, and then his hands changed. They weren't kind anymore. They weren't careful. He tied me up, beat me, and laughed while he did it. But he made one mistake. He looked away. I shot him, over and over. I don't remember how many times. I just remember the silence afterwards. No birds, no wind, just my heartbeat pounding like a war drum in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took his car, his cash, and I left. After that, the fear was always there. Every time I got into another car, I remembered his hands, and I started to think, what if they're all like him? What if every single one of them is just waiting to snap? So I didn't wait. I got in, I smiled, I listened, and if something didn't feel right, I acted first. 7 men, that's what they say. 7 lives taken on Florida's highways between 1989 and 1990. They weren't all bad, maybe. Some of them probably would have dropped me off safely, but after the first, I couldn't tell anymore. The line between danger and safety blurred until it vanished completely. They called it murder. I called it survival. They caught me in 1991, sitting in a biker bar, drinking cheap beer and pretending like I still had a future. My so-called best friend turned on me. They said I was evil, cold-blooded, that I hunted men like animals. But they never talked about the nights I spent crying under freeway bridges, the scars that never healed, the voices that wouldn't stop. I sat on death row for over a decade. They studied me like I was a lab rat, dissecting my past, my mind, my choices. In the end, it didn't matter. The world had already decided who I was. I was executed in 2002. They asked if I had any last words. I said, I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, big mothership and all. I'll be back, and maybe I will. Maybe one day when you're driving down a dark Florida highway, all alone, you'll see a woman by the side of the road, blonde, pale, eyes like mine. You'll slow down, she'll smile, and you'll remember this story just a second too late. Eileen Warnos. This happened just last night. I was driving home from Bellingham, Washington, and made what I now realize was a terrible decision. I chose to take the back roads instead of the freeway. I'd been tired all day, and the thought of dealing with fast-moving traffic on the highway at night didn't sound great. I figured the scenic route would be more peaceful, more relaxing. It wasn't. Most of the drive was uneventful, quiet even. But there were 4 moments that genuinely creeped me out, and the last one still has me rattled. I don't know if it was paranormal or just someone messing with me, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. The first thing was just weird. At one point, I glanced up at my rearview mirror and I saw a strange light trailing behind me. It wasn't normal headlights. It was too bright and felt off. I figured maybe it was a car coming up on the road, but just as I started paying attention, the light suddenly shut off. gone. Like someone flipped a switch. Maybe it was just headlights. Maybe it was a reflection or something. But it stuck with me. Something about how sudden it vanished didn't sit right. Not long after, I came around a bend and something on the tree line caught my eye. A shadow. It looked like it was moving, like something was running alongside me for a moment. Just for a second, but clear enough for my brain to register it before I told myself it had to be nothing. Still, for that brief half second, it looked human, or at least shaped like it. I shook it off, kept driving. Around twilight, when the last bit of sun was disappearing, I passed a man walking down the side of the road. He looked homeless, dragging a little wagon behind him. He wasn't doing anything, just walking. But the fact we were in the absolute middle of nowhere made it feel wrong. There were no towns nearby, no houses, just woods and darkness. He didn't even look at me when I passed, but I still got this cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. Something about him didn't feel like he belonged there. This next part, this is where it went from creepy to straight up terrifying. It was fully dark by now. I was still about an hour from home, driving through a forested stretch with no lights, no houses, just miles of trees on either side. I looked down at my phone to skip a song, maybe 2 seconds max, and when I looked up, I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. Close headlights. Whoever it was had come out of nowhere. I hadn't seen them behind me before, and now, suddenly, they were practically on my bumper. I was doing 40 miles per hour, so I sped up to 60, figuring they'd either pass me or back off. But they didn't. They stayed right behind me, way too close. So I sped up again, 75, maybe even 80. Still there. I started panicking. Out here, people don't tailgate like they do on the freeway. It felt aggressive, like they were trying to push me to do something. Then I saw a turn up ahead. I couldn't take it at 80. I slammed the brakes. The car behind me almost rear-ended me. Then, and I don't know if they thought I brake-checked them or what, they sped up even more and started swerving behind me, like they were trying to intimidate me. Or worse. I genuinely thought that was it. I thought I was either going to crash or get run off the road by some psycho. But then, just as suddenly as they showed up, they turned. Their blinker came on, they made a right turn and disappeared down another road. No explanation, no sign of them again. Just gone. It felt like something out of a movie, like I was being hunted for no reason. I still don't know what they wanted, if they were just messing with me or if something way worse could have happened if I didn't speed up. All I know is I'm never taking the back roads at night again. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Back roads of Washington? Yeah, they're cursed. This happened to me last year, and to this day, I can't stop thinking about it. Every time it comes to mind, I get this sick, heavy feeling in my stomach, like something's pulling me down. My grandparents were heading out on a 6-hour drive to another city for a business meeting, and I decided to tag along. I've always enjoyed long road trips, and while they were busy, I planned to check out the malls and do some shopping. They'd already booked an Airbnb in advance. It was in this tall, high-rise building, modern-looking, but strange. The moment we arrived, I noticed that the place looked completely empty. Not a single light on in any of the other units. It was like we were the only people staying there. The woman who greeted us was odd. She was overly friendly, but in a weird, forced way, like someone pretending to act normal, but overdoing it. She wouldn't stop talking, mostly about how the place was for sale and whether we were interested in buying it. I remember feeling uncomfortable, wondering why she wouldn't just leave. From the second I stepped into the apartment, I got a bad vibe. Really bad. The place itself was clean and modern, with huge windows and a balcony that overlooked the city. It should have felt luxurious, but something about it was just off. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was probably just tired from the drive. That first night passed without anything strange. I fell asleep quickly, but the next day is when everything changed. I woke up feeling off, completely drained. I felt nauseous, dizzy, and disoriented, like I hadn't slept at all. My grandparents had already left early for their appointments, so I was alone in the apartment. I wandered around aimlessly, feeling exhausted but too restless to relax. Eventually, I went back into the bedroom and laid down again. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. I had no idea I'd even fallen asleep. It was already close to noon. I felt worse this time. Sluggish, dazed. My grandma texted to ask if I wanted to meet her at the mall, but I could barely move. I stayed in my pajamas, grabbed a pack of biscuits because I was too tired to make real food, and then, without even realizing, I passed out again. And that's when things got disturbing. The third time I woke up, I heard voices, my grandparents' voices, right outside my bedroom door. I remember thinking, oh, they're back already? But something felt wrong. The tone of their voices wasn't normal. I couldn't explain it, but something about the way they were talking made my skin crawl. They were talking about me, saying things like they were going to call the police because I was out of my mind. But their voices, they didn't sound quite like them. It was like someone trying to imitate them, off by just a little. Slightly distorted, emotionless, and worst of all, it sounded like they were trying not to laugh. Like they were mocking me. I was wide awake, fully alert. Something deep in my gut told me this wasn't a dream. I sat there frozen, listening. My grandmother said something like, "I'm going in to get her." And that's when a wave of panic hit me. I rushed to the door, yanked it open, ready to confront whatever was there. But the hallway was empty, silent. I checked the entire apartment. No one was there. My grandparents were still out. I locked myself back in the bedroom and didn't move until they came home hours later. At first, I didn't tell them what happened. I thought maybe I'd hallucinated because of how sick I felt. But when we got back home, my grandma told me something that stopped me cold. She said she'd had the worst sleep paralysis she'd ever experienced while we were there. She said it felt like people were climbing all over her in bed during the night. A few days later, we found out something even darker. A man had stayed in that exact Airbnb just weeks before us. He had shot and killed someone in a fit of rage, then disappeared. The next day, he took his own life. Whatever was still in that apartment, it didn't want us there. And whatever it was, I think it fed on me. When I was a kid, my step-grandparents lived in a small mountain town in Oregon. Their house sat at the very end of a dead-end street. I still remember the wooden guardrail painted white with orange stripes. Only about 5 houses were on that street, but one of them stood out. It was directly across from my grandparents' place. It was older, darker. It had this strange energy, like it didn't belong there. I didn't know how to explain it back then, but it made me feel uneasy. My mom and stepdad would sometimes drop me, my sister, and my stepbrother off to stay with our grandparents. I was the youngest, about 5 years younger than the other two. We always had a great time, hiking, picking berries, barbecues. It was peaceful, happy, until Raquel showed up. She came from that house across the street. We had never seen anyone enter or leave it before. It was late one evening, almost dusk, when we heard the metal gate of our yard creak. She walked in like she belonged, said her name was Raquel. Glasses, tomboyish, older than us. She asked if she could play basketball with us. We said sure, Nothing seemed off about her at first. For about a year, she was just Raquel. Then, one night, everything changed. We were up late, around 1 a.m., playing Nintendo 64. The room was dark except for the glow of the paused screen. Suddenly, we heard the chain link gate outside rattling. I peeked, just barely above the windowsill. It was Raquel. She was wearing red plaid pajamas, a black hoodie, a backpack, no shoes. It had rained earlier, so everything was soaked. She didn't look around. She just climbed the fence, walked slowly down the street, hopped the guardrail, and disappeared into the forest. No flashlight, no hesitation. I stayed awake until 3:30, waiting to hear her come back. She didn't. The next morning, my grandparents told me to take out the trash before we headed to the lake. I looked across the street, and there she was, sitting on her porch, a full glass of red liquid in front of her. Her hood was up, shoulders raised, eyes locked on me. I waved. She didn't move. No expression, just stared. Later, we heard from a local boy named Cage. He had hung out at Raquel's house with some friends. He told my sister he'd never go back, said she locked him in the basement alone, turned off all the lights, and laughed while he screamed for help. She had gone upstairs to get the others and instead locked the door. He didn't think it was funny. Months passed. We visited again. Raquel seemed normal. She invited us to a clubhouse she built behind her house. We went. I stepped out for a minute to pee. That's when I saw her shove a stick into the door lock and unplug the power cord. My siblings were trapped inside, yelling. She turned to me, walked slowly, eyes wide, said, "If you open that clubhouse, I will hurt you." I ran, pulled out the stick, freed my siblings. My sister snapped, grabbed Raquel by the shirt, shoved her to the ground. But Raquel, she smiled. A twisted, proud smile, like she enjoyed it. We told our grandparents. They went to speak with her parents. Her mother said Raquel had changed recently. She'd stayed up all night in the basement. They found out she had been using a Ouija board. She said her daughter would throw up in the middle of the night, violently. As we left their porch, I glanced at the basement window. I swear I saw Raquel's face watching us from inside, but it didn't look like her. Her eyes, they looked like a cat's. Yellow, wide, still. We never went back. A few years later, my mom and stepdad divorced. Oregon became a distant memory. Until 15 years later, I told this exact story to my fiance's family while we were staying at a cabin. Right after I finished, my phone rang. Unknown number, Oregon area code. I didn't want to answer. My fiance's mom dared me to. I picked up, nothing but a high-pitched buzzing. 3 seconds, then silence. Call ended. We sat there in total silence. No one said a word. I still think about Raquel, about that night, about those eyes. I hope I never see Oregon again. No one knew darkness like I did. I didn't look for light. I hunted fear. I listened to screams like others listen to music. I was raised in chaos. My father's fists were louder than his words. My cousin Mike, a Vietnam vet, showed me how to hold a gun and what it does to a skull. One night, he pulled the trigger on his wife right in front of me. I didn't scream. I didn't run. Something inside me opened and never closed again. Before the headlines, before the name Night Stalker, I was just a boy wandering through graveyards, high and hollow. I felt at home among the dead. The first time I tasted control, I was still a teenager. Violence didn't scare me. It called to me. April 10th, 1984, San Francisco. She was 9, alone. I lured her away. The basement swallowed her, and I walked out as if nothing had happened. June 28th, 1984, Jenny Vinco, 79. Window, bedroom, silence. Repeated strikes. She never saw me coming, and I didn't feel a thing. March 17, 1985, Maria Hernandez and Dale Okazaki. Maria saw the gun, ran, survived. Dale didn't. One shot, lights out. Same night, I found Cy Leon Yu in her car. One pull of the trigger, red on the dashboard. March 27, the Zazaras. Vincent fell first. Maxine tried to fight. I didn't just kill, I left a message, one the devil would understand. May 14th, the Doys. I ended him, she watched, and then I reminded her what fear tastes like. May 29th, Bell and Lang. Electric cords, hammers, symbols drawn in blood. They wouldn't forget me, even if they survived. July 2nd, Whitney Bennett, 16. The tire iron, blow after blow, but she lived. That stayed with me. July 5th, Joyce Nelson. No weapon this time, just my hands and my rage. July 7th, Sophie Dickman. She begged. I didn't care, but I let her live, not out of mercy, out of boredom. July 20, 2 homes, 2 scenes of horror. The first, machetes and screams. The second, fear passed from parent to child. The whole family left scared. August 6th, the Petersons. 2 more, but they made it. I was slipping. August 8th, the Abawaths. He never woke up. She did. The baby cried. I didn't stop. August 18, Bill Carnes and Inez Erickson. 3 shots into him. He lived. She lived too, and she told the world what she saw. Then the streets turned against me. Late August, East LA. They baited me. Left windows open, cops waiting inside. But I didn't use doors. It came from beneath, the sewer. I surfaced in a quiet home. 2 elderly sisters. One died in her sleep. The other begged. I left her throat open. They watched the front. I walked out the back. August 31st. Daylight betrayed me. A face on the paper. Eyes on the streets. They chased me, beat me, held me till the police arrived. I was done. Courtroom, circus. They wanted remorse. I gave them silence. They asked why. I smiled. Death row held me for 23 years. But in the end, it wasn't the state that killed me. It was cancer. Even in prison, letters kept coming. Some people fear monsters. Others fall in love with them. They still whisper my name online, try to explain what I was, but they don't get it. I wasn't made in the dark. I was the dark. Good night and sweet dreams, if you're capable of having them. See you in the shadows. My name is Richard Ramirez, and the night belonged to me.